What is it, Jason? Jason, what is it? Why aren't you laughing now like you did up there? But is this not fun anymore? Have I failed to entertain you?
A trilogy is a group of 3 related pieces. 3 games. Far Cry, Far Cry 2, and Far Cry 3. Perhaps the greatest untrilogy in existence. So here's where I explain the Far Cry formula, some shit you've probably heard at least 4 billion times before, but let me explain and then we'll get into the serious stuff. So, for those of you Untermensch who've never heard of the Far Cry formula before, it basically goes like this.
Every game is an ultra-violent vacation, built to exploit an exoticized vacation spot, giving us whatever excuse we need to blast away thousands of whoever or whatever may be there.
That's one way of looking at it. Different area, different place, different time period. And that certainly may be the case now, but in the first 3 games, the Far Cry formula was not just a different place and a different story, but a different idea, a different set of mechanics, a different goal. In a time when regenerating health was innovative and new, Far Cry set out to do what Crysis did 3 years before. Not telling the best story, but being super action-packed. Which went even further in the Instincts expansion, basically making you a super soldier, going around a semi-open world, wrecking shit up with crazy abilities that hadn't really been seen before. The action was over the top, the sci-fi leaned towards fantasy, and the flavor was distinctly 80s. But then we come to the second game, Far Cry 2. Set in a tumultuous Africa, Far Cry 2 is far from light-hearted, or even badass, really. You're sick for a good while with malaria, working just so you can survive another day. There are no huge extended battles. Every instance is a skirmish, fast and punchy. 2 shots from a mounted gun can put you in the ground forever. Proper stealth and ambushes are almost vital for taking on larger groups, forcing you to play with the day and night cycle and really use the stealth system. Which is strange to even call a system because for such a large role it plays in-game, there are no detection markers. There are hardly really any sneaking tools. There aren't any magazines you can throw like in Metal Gear Solid. There aren't decoys you can deploy like Dishonored 2. It's just you, your gun, your machete, your map, your telescope, and your wits. And that can really be said about the whole game. There are no neato, game-changing player traits here. There's no RPG-esque leveling here. There is a buddy system that's pretty interesting, but beyond calling in help when you're screwed, it doesn't really do a whole lot. Success is largely decided by the player's skill and their equipment, which is a far cry from the first and third games. Ba-dum-dum. You see? You see what I'm doing here? Oh man, it's like I'm a manufacturer of a guy who does things, because I am making points. And I'm still fucking sick, so I'm sure my voice sounds like absolute death and cancer right now. Hoo boy. But I'm not gonna go too much deeper into what Far Cry 2 does. I'm only bringing this stuff up to show you how it's not just different from the first and third games in its location and story, but what it's trying to do with its gameplay, feelings it's trying to evoke, everything overall. It is a far cry from the others overall. And with that, let's jump into the third game, boyos. And this might be the biggest Far Cry of all 3, because where the first 2 were largely driven by their game mechanics, though they were different, Far Cry 3 has an intense character focus, watching Jason Brody turn from a white-collar trust fund kid douche into a mercenary third-world warrior psychopath. And with this narrative structure shift comes a gameplay structure shift as well. In Far Cry 3, you don't gain skill from playing. It's not just about you learning how to play the game. It's about growing your character with RPG skills up 3 distinct, well, not really distinct, trees. There's a laundry list of activities you can do, and if you do enough of them, you get a cool thing. The cool thing isn't that cool, but it's cool enough that you kinda want to do it, I guess. Being able to drop down on somebody and then get 4 kills completely for free is something I guess you kinda want. But you know what I'm talking about. You've played an Assassin's Creed game, you've played one of the newer Far Cry games, you've played a Ubisoft sandbox. You know exactly what I mean. This is the game that started that trend, really, in earnest. Loved Far Cry 3's story, preferred Far Cry 2's gameplay, but you know what I'm talking about, so we're gonna move on. Far Cry 3 took the series in a completely new direction, and continuing the trend, making it a Far Cry from its predecessors. And when the credits rolled, we were left with this untrilogy. 3 games, totally different, related in name alone. Different narrative structures, different gameplay systems, different environments, different everything. Everything was different, and that was super, super fucking cool. You know, how do these Ubisoft guys hit it out of the park every single time, experimenting with every new game, every new installment being completely different, while keeping the franchise distinct and beloved because of the experimentation, not despite it. Trying new things, experimenting is risk. Big companies, big governments don't like risks. They don't like experimenting. So this AAA franchise, this mainstream series, experimenting consistently and getting away with it was just the coolest thing, and I was so hyped to see where they would go in the future. And when I heard Far Cry 4 was going to be set in the Himalayas, man, I was beyond hyped. I was going, oh shit, son, we're gonna get some high-quality Sherpa gameplay. You know, we struggled with malaria in Far Cry 2, and that was one of my favorite parts of that game, so maybe we would get some cold-weather survival gameplay in the Himalayas. Of the extreme conditions, cold is one of my favorites. It's great for building suspense, and it's a great setting for horror. I was high-key hoping Far Cry 4 would be a horror game. Or at least be a little spooky, if you know what I'm saying. But it wasn't. For all the love Far Cry 4 gets, and I didn't dislike Far Cry 4, but it felt more like an Assassin's Creed sequel. The exact same things with some new tools to make it all a bit easier. And I just said I didn't dislike Far Cry 4, and as a game, I don't. But as a Far Cry game, I do. God, I hate Far Cry 4 as a Far Cry game, because it breaks my beloved Far Cry formula. No longer is Ubisoft experimenting. No longer are they taking risks. No longer are they doing anything exciting. And I expected Far Cry Primal to change that, or I at least hoped it would. I didn't really expect it to, if I'm being honest, and it didn't. It felt like Blood Dragon in the worst way possible. Not only did it still feel too much like Far Cry 3, but it was patronizing because they took something that could have been really interesting under the Far Cry formula, under the Far Cry umbrella, and made something really special, but they didn't. They followed the Far Cry 3 formula. They followed the Assassin's Creed formula. But I guess Ubisoft is following the Far Cry formula now. Because Far Cry is a formula now. The Untrilogy's specialty, the original Far Cry formula, was so special because it was not a formula. You expected the unexpected and knew it was going to be alright because they knew what they were doing, and even if they didn't, then it would still be workable. But now we know exactly what to expect from now on. Unconnected characters in unconnected locations doing the same things. It's like flying to America, going into an office building and seeing Mary Jo from Kentucky rotting at her job, and then going to India, going into an office building and seeing Ravi Jabbar rotting at his job, both doing the same things behind similar desks. Like somebody with a fecal transplant fetish, same shit, different toilet. But what am I getting at with all of this? I'm not getting at anything, actually. I was just on Far Cry 2 the other day when I realized how much I missed it. How much I missed the old Ubisoft. The Ubisoft with balls, who didn't mind taking risks, who didn't release deluxe gold and ultimate editions of the exact same game, adding basically nothing, or key important features that would have been included with any of their prior releases from the start. The Ubisoft who was run by people who seemed to understand the art. The Ubisoft who made my favorite trilogy, or, as I said, untrilogy. The Ubisoft who could try new things and succeed, and were willing to try new things because they knew they could succeed. But that's not who they are now, and that's probably the Ubisoft we will never see again. Far Cry 2, and to a lesser extent, but still included, Far Cry 3, came from a time when AAA giants, AAA titans were truly titans. Forces to be reckoned with, shaking the foundations. But those titans are dead. And new ones will rise one day. So if you haven't played Far Cry 1, 2, or 3, give them a go, because they're really special, not just as good games, but as good pieces of history. And if you know of any developers or genres with developers who could be or are titans who are experimenting with new things, or could be in the future, sound off in the comments, let me know, let your buddies watching know, because I'm interested and I'm sure they're interested, and we'd love to hear from you. And which Far Cry game is your favorite, and why? Do you like the newer ones? Personally, I like Far Cry 2 the best, not just because it was pretty serious, but because it had the best map editor and multiplayer I have ever played. And that'll about wrap it up, everybody. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed, because, I certainly enjoyed making it. So, like if you enjoyed, because that helps me out a lot. Subscribe if you haven't, because we do this shit more than weekly, even though we've been doing it once a week lately, because I've been sick and I was at a trade show last week. And comment if you have anything interesting to say, because you're smart and I'd love to hear from you. And believe it or not, you guys do say some pretty cool shit sometimes, and it really blows my mind. So, you got any mind-blowing stuff, let me know. Blow my mind. Blow your buddies' minds. But don't blow your mind, my mind, or your buddies' minds out. We aren't that far gone yet. We'll get there. And yeah, thanks again for watching, everybody. We have a lot of fun on this channel, and I look forward to doing this with you guys again in the future. Woohoo! To make things right, you need someone to hold you tight, and the big